A broken compass, a guitar missing two strings, and a porch light that never turns off. Most people would call that junk. But for Elias, it's everything that's held his world together. What he didn't expect was that one rainy night someone completely lost would stumble right into this quiet little world and change everything. If stories like this speak to you about second chances, quiet healing, and finding home in the most unexpected places, you're in the right place. Go ahead, hit like, maybe subscribe, and let's step into this story together. The sky was the color of rust, the kind of late afternoon where heat stuck to your skin like wet cloth. Elias tightened the strap of his faded baseball cap and wiped the sweat off his brow. His boots crunched against gravel as he walked past the hollowed frame of what used to be a hardware store, now just broken glass and memories. Mesa Valley was a ghost town in everything but name. He cupped his hands around his mouth and called out, "Pico, come on, buddy, where are you?" His voice bounced off the cracked concrete walls, no answer but the lazy hum of cicadas and the occasional hiss of the wind through broken chain-link fences. A torn flyer flapped against a telephone pole. Missing dog, the ink was faded, years old. Someone else looking for something long gone. Elias sighed. "You stupid cat, why today of all days?" He stepped over a collapsed shopping cart, weaving past a pile of cinder blocks that hadn't been touched in a decade. Ahead, the skeleton of an old gas station, the neon sign buzzed weakly, still clinging to life despite missing half its letters. The air smelled like dust and old motor oil. "Pico, get your furry butt out here. Lena is gonna kill me if I come home without you." A noise, sharp, quick, not a meow, but something else. He froze. Somewhere behind the busted vending machine, something shifted. Elias squinted, moving closer. The crunch of gravel beneath his boots sounded too loud, like an intruder in a place that had long since stopped caring about visitors. "Hey, Pico, is that you, bud?" His voice softened, now unsure. Another sound, this time different. Not animal, not a cat. It was breathing, shallow, ragged. Elias stepped around the corner of the vending machine. His heart punched against his ribs. There, half hidden in the shadow between the dumpster and the broken wall, a woman. She was slumped against the brick's knees, drawn to her chest, head down. Her shirt was torn at the shoulder, streaks of dirt and something darker smeared across her arms. Her hands trembled as if gripping the last thread of consciousness. For a second, Elias thought she might already be dead. Then, barely audible, a voice, a whisper carried on the wind. "Please do not let them find me." Her head tilted back slightly, eyes fluttered, half open, wild, glassy. Then silence. Elias stared. The missing cat forgotten, the world around him held its breath. And so did he. Elias took one careful step forward, instinct kicking in before thought could catch up. His hands hovered near his pockets, not for a weapon, but for something, anything that might make sense of this. The neon sign above flickered, half lit, half dead. The letters spelled out bowl, but the O hung sideways, dangling by a single wire, swinging lazily in the dry wind. The glow from the sign painted the woman in washed-out blues and sickly greens. She was breathing barely. Her chest rose shallow and uneven. Her right arm clutched something tight against her ribs, a thin silver chain wrapped around her fingers. A dog tag. Military issue. The name was scratched, unreadable from this distance. Elias crouched not too close. His voice softened without meaning to. Ma'am, hey, can you hear me? No answer. Only the brittle sound of her breath struggling to exist. He scanned the area, nothing but empty parking lots, busted windows, and the rusted frame of an old dumpster. No purse, no phone, no shoes. Her left ankle was swollen red and angry, probably sprained or worse. Her face told a story no words could. A split lip, bruising along her jaw. Dirt ground into her skin like she'd crawled through hell and landed right here under this broken sign in a forgotten corner of a forgotten town. Okay, all right, it's gonna be fine. Elias muttered mostly to himself. He pulled off his jacket, faded denim with one elbow patched. Gently he draped it over her shoulders. She flinched at the touch but didn't pull away. Then as he adjusted the collar around her neck, her hand shot out weak but desperate. She grabbed a fistful of his sleeve. Her eyes opened wild, pleading. You do not let them find me. She gasped, voice shredded like broken glass. Elias froze. Who's looking for you? But her grip loosened, her body sagged. Whatever strength she'd gathered was spent. He glanced back toward the street. Nothing. No headlights, no footsteps, no one coming, not yet. His phone. He yanked it out of his pocket. No signal. Of course. Out here, signal was a rumor, a luxury for people who still lived where maps had meaning. He looked down at her again. Her lips were pale, her fingernails rimmed with dirt. The faint tremor in her hand was slowing too much. She wouldn't last out here, not like this. Elias took a breath. All right, you're coming with me. Carefully, he slipped one arm under her knees, the other behind her back. She was lighter than expected, too light for someone her size. As he stood, her head fell against his shoulder. The dog tag slipped from her fingers, dangling against his chest, catching the flicker of the broken neon. Elias adjusted his grip. The wind kicked up dust. Somewhere far off, a train horn moaned a lonely sound for a lonely night. With no better plan and nothing left to do, Elias started walking. Toward home. The walk back felt longer than it should have. Elias adjusted his grip. The woman's head rested against his collarbone, hair tangled, damp with sweat and dust. Her breathing was shallow but steady, barely. Every few steps, her fingers twitched against his shirt, involuntary, like the last sparks of a dying fire. The narrow dirt road to the cabin was almost invisible at night. Only muscle memory knew the way, the curve past the dry creek bed, the split in the fence line, the oak tree with the missing limb. Ahead, a soft glow, the porch light. He exhaled heavier than the air. As he reached the front steps, the screen door creaked open. A small voice cut through the dark. Dad, where's Pico? Lena stood barefoot on the porch, her flannel pajamas, two big sleeves rolled twice. Her hair was a mess of sleep and worry. In one hand she clutched her flashlight, in the other her battered wooden compass, the one her mother had given her before everything changed. Her eyes moved from her father to the woman in his arms. She stepped back instinctively. The flashlight tilted down, casting sharp shadows against the porch railing. Who is that? Her voice trembled, not with fear exactly, but something close. Elias shifted the weight in his arms. I found her. His words were quieter than he meant. She's hurt. Bad. Lena's fingers tightened around the compass. Is she dangerous? Elias paused. The question hit harder than it should have. No, I don't think so. He wasn't sure if that was for her or for himself. Lena didn't move. Her gaze flicked between the stranger and her father, reading something deeper than words could reach. Kids were like that. They knew when adults were lying and when adults didn't know what the truth even was. The woman stirred barely. A soft sound left her lips, not words. A tremor ran through her, then passed. We have to help her, Elias said simply. Not a question, not a debate, just a truth. Lena hesitated, then quietly she stepped aside. I'll get the blankets, she whispered. Elias nodded, carrying the woman inside. The cabin smelled like cedar and something warm, the leftover scent of the dinner Lena had made herself, grilled cheese, slightly burnt. He laid the woman down on the old couch, pulled a pillow from the armchair, and slid it beneath her head. Her body barely reacted, only her fingers twitched, still clinging to that broken dog tag. The porch light buzzed softly. Outside, the desert wind rattled the windows. Lena returned with an armful of blankets, placing them at her father's feet without a word. She stood there watching. Her eyes asked the question her mouth was too afraid to say. What happens now? Elias didn't have the answer. Not yet. The first thing Camille noticed was the smell. Not antiseptic, not bleach, not blood. Cedar and coffee, and something else warm like bread. Her eyes blinked open, slow, reluctant. The ceiling above was wood slats, uneven, a faint water stain shaped like a crooked star in one corner. Light filtered through thin curtains, morning light, soft, dusty. The kind of light that didn't demand anything from you, just let you exist. For a few seconds her brain scrambled, trying to match what she saw with what she remembered. Nothing fit. A cabin, small, worn but clean. A faded couch beneath her. A wooden coffee table scarred with years of use, a crack ran down the middle, stitched back together with brass staples. Her hands instinctively checked herself. Rib cage sore. Left ankle wrapped tight. Shoulders blanketed in something heavy, denim, a jacket not hers. Her fingers brushed something cool against her collarbone. The dog tag. Still there. Still clenched in her hand like a lifeline. She swallowed. Dry. Her throat felt scraped raw like sandpaper. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, heavy boots on old wood. A man's voice, gruff but not unkind. You're awake. She flinched, pushed herself halfway upright. Her vision swam for a second before settling. A man stood in the doorway to what looked like a kitchen. Mid-40s, broad shoulders, face lined by sun and time. Plaid shirt sleeves, rolled hands wiping on a dish towel. No threat in his stance, no weapon, just watching. Easy, he said, voice lower now. No one's gonna hurt you here. Camille scanned the room again. Front door closed, windows unlocked but not barred. Her body relaxed a fraction. Where am I? Her voice cracked barely more than a whisper. The man folded the towel, set it aside. My cabin, edge of Mesa Valley. He paused, not prying, just offering space. Name's Elias. Camille's fingers tightened around the dog tag. Her pulse thudded in her ears. She wanted to ask 100 things, but her mouth only managed one. Why? Elias leaned against the counter, shrugged. Found you under the neon at Miller's. Didn't seem right leaving someone out there. His answer was so simple it almost felt impossible. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, her shoulders dropped. Not safe, not yet, but safer. For a moment neither of them spoke. The air inside the cabin carried the scent of coffee left too long on the burner. Faint wood smoke lingered beneath it, mixed with something sweet, maybe honey. Elias poured himself a cup. No offer extended yet, no pressure. Camille pulled the denim jacket tighter around her shoulders. Her fingers brushed over the stitching along the sleeve, rough, worn, patched in places with different shades of thread. Someone had fixed this jacket more than once. Finally, her voice broke the silence. Camille. Elias glanced over, met her eyes, gave a slow nod. All right. Camille. He stirred his coffee once, twice. No last name. A pause, barely noticeable, but there. Her gaze shifted toward the window. Out there, the desert stretched wide, endless. No walls, no corners, just open. Strangely claustrophobic when you were running from something or someone. Not today, she answered, soft but firm. Elias didn't press. He took a sip, winced. Bitter didn't matter. Well, names are just placeholders anyway. He set the mug down. People are more than the stories they tell or don't tell. Camille studied him. This man, rough hands, tired eyes, the quiet kind of man who didn't fill silences just to hear himself talk. Elias what? Her question was half genuine, half reflex. He chuckled once, no edge. Most folks here just call me Elias. The male still shows Merrick if that matters. He scratched the back of his neck. Hasn't mattered much in a while. The clock above the kitchen sink ticked, ticked, then stuttered. The second hand caught, jumped forward, then ticked again. Imperfect, but working. Camille traced the edge of the blanket draped over her knees. Fingers idle, mind anything but. You live here alone. Elias nodded, mostly. Not counting Lena. His thumb jerked toward the hallway. My kid. Camille blinked. Something about the word kid, it softened the edge of everything just slightly. She saw you last night. Scared her half to death. Not every day a stranger shows up busted, bleeding, looking like trouble found them before they even asked. Camille's jaw clenched. She looked down at the floorboards, counted the knots in the wood. Yeah, that sounds about right. But Elias didn't mean it as judgment, just fact. Simple as weather. I patched your ankle best I could, he added. Not a doctor, but I got by. A quiet settled, not heavy, not sharp, just quiet. Camille finally whispered more to herself than anyone else. Thank you. Elias pushed off the counter, poured another cup. Coffee's terrible, he said, but it's hot. You want... She hesitated, then nodded. For now, yeah. The soft creak of a door made Camille glance up. A small figure stood at the edge of the hallway, bare feet, tangled hair, gripping something tight in her hands. Lena. She hovered there, not stepping forward, not retreating either. Her eyes flicked from her father to Camille to the floor. Camille adjusted her jacket, sitting a little straighter, instinct maybe, or defense. Elias noticed, nodded toward his daughter. Morning, kiddo. His voice softened, different than when he spoke to anyone else. Lena mumbled something close to morning, but didn't quite say it out loud. Her gaze stayed locked on Camille. Cautious, curious, quiet. Her small hands fidgeted with whatever she was holding. A round object, wooden worn smooth at the edges. Camille squinted. A compass, or what used to be one. The glass was cracked, the needle hung loose, rattling inside the frame whenever Lena shifted her grip. Elias wiped his hands on a rag. She's been trying to fix that thing for weeks. Lena hugged the broken compass closer. Mom gave it to me, she said quietly. Before, the sentence didn't finish, didn't need to. Silence wrapped around the room, not heavy, just careful. Camille leaned forward, elbows on her knees. Her voice dropped gentler than she expected. Can I see it? Lena hesitated, then slowly crossed the room. Small feet padded against wood. She extended the compass like an offering, not to a stranger, but to someone trying not to be one. Camille turned it over in her hands. Scratches lined the edges, the hinge was bent. The needle had slipped off its pin. This was made to last, Camille murmured. Just needs someone to believe it's worth fixing. Lena's eyes widened, half surprise, half something else, like hope but quieter. Camille reached into the side pocket of her borrowed jacket, pulled out a multi-tool, instinct more than habit. Mind if I try? Lena shook her head, lips pressed together, holding back words she hadn't decided whether to trust yet. Camille set the compass on the coffee table, flipped open the smallest screwdriver. Her hands worked without thinking, tightening the hinge, nudging the needle back onto its pivot, straightening the warped frame. For a few minutes, the only sound was the soft scrape of metal on metal, and the tick-tick stutter of the wall clock above the kitchen sink. When she was done, Camille gave the compass a gentle tap. The needle wobbled, then steadied. North. Lena gasped, hands flew to her mouth, then she smiled. Small, careful, but real. It works. Camille handed it back. Maybe. Or maybe it just needed someone to remind it how. Elias watched from the kitchen, arms crossed, saying nothing but seeing everything. For the first time, the space between stranger and family got just a little smaller. The morning settled over Mesa Valley like a soft quilt. Sunlight spilled through thin clouds, turning the dust into something that almost looked like gold. Elias stood near the garden beds behind the cabin, hands buried deep in the soil. His boots pressed into the earth, tamping down the stubborn weeds that seemed to grow faster than anything he had actually planted. The rows were crooked, the fence leaning just slightly to the right. But it was enough. Enough to grow tomatoes that sometimes made it peppers that sometimes didn't. Camille watched for a moment from the porch steps. The air smelled of dirt, sagebrush, and the faintest hint of something sweet, honeysuckle maybe, or just the memory of it. Lena knelt by the far corner of the garden, digging with a little trowel tongue peeking out in concentration. Her hands were already caked in mud. Elias didn't say much, never did while working. He just nodded toward the other end of the row. If you're up for it, that corner needs clearing. Camille pushed off the steps, no questions. No hesitation, just a simple, wordless agreement. She slipped her boots on, borrowed a size too big, and crouched by the fence line. Her fingers found the dry roots, tugged, twisted. Muscle memory. Her body knew the work, even if her mind wasn't sure why. For a while, the only sounds were the scrape of metal against dirt, the rustle of weeds pulled free, and Lena humming something tuneless but happy enough. Nobody asked what Camille used to do. Nobody asked why she ended up here. And for now, that was enough. A breeze kicked up cool against skin warmed by the sun. Camille glanced sideways. Elias was fixing a section of chicken wire with careful hands. Strong hands. Hands that had clearly spent a lifetime making things stay together or trying. "Ground's dry," she said after a while, just to fill the space, not to demand anything from it. "Always is this time of year," Elias replied, not looking up. "Rain'll come when it feels like it." Camille nodded. Quiet understanding. The kind that didn't need unpacking. Lena straightened, holding something in her hand. "Look, a heart rock." It was small, lopsided, but sure enough shaped like a heart. She set it on the fence post like it belonged there. Nobody said it, but somehow that felt true. The afternoon drifted in slow, lazy warm. Inside the cabin, the sun spilled across the floor in long strips of light, cutting through the dusty air like pale ribbons. In the corner by the window leaned an old guitar. Faded wood, a crack near the bass, 3 tuning pegs mismatched, one wrapped in blue electrical tape. Camille noticed it earlier but hadn't touched it. Not yet. Now alone for a moment, Elias outside stacking firewood, Lena busy drawing stick figures and suns on scrap paper. Camille stood in front of the guitar. Her fingers hovered, then reached. The neck felt familiar, the weight balanced in her palm. Muscle memory surfaced before thought could interfere. She sat down slowly, ran her thumb over the strings. Dust danced in the light. The first strum was rough, the strings dry, out of tune but not broken. Her fingers moved without asking permission. G chord, D, back to C. Simple shapes. Her hands remembered, but her mind did not. She couldn't recall the name of the song, or even if it was one. Just fragments. A rhythm her body knew before her brain could catch up. The sound filled the small space, raw but gentle. Notes bent slightly off key but honest. Lena peeked up from her drawing crayons, paused mid-stroke. Her eyes widened, not with surprise, but with something deeper. Recognition. Wonder. She set her paper down, crept closer, barefoot on the wood floor. Careful, quiet. Camille's fingers slowed, stumbled, then found their way back again. A chord resolved. Another followed, less shaky this time. Her thumb brushed a string, soft, almost reverent. She closed her eyes for half a second, and for the briefest flicker, something flickered back. Not a face, not a place, just the shape of safety, the memory of stillness, of being not what the world demanded, but simply herself. Lena sat cross-legged nearby, hands tucked under her chin, watching. Not interrupting, not asking, just there. The melody trailed off unfinished, as if it had never really been meant to end. Camille rested her hand on the strings, dampening the sound. Silence rushed in, but it wasn't empty. Lena's voice came out, small, hesitant. Was that a song? Camille opened her eyes, blinked against the light. I don't know. A soft laugh escaped. Maybe it used to be. Lena tilted her head. It was pretty. Camille looked down at her hands, surprised by how steady they were now. Thanks, kiddo. Outside, the wind stirred the chimes hanging from the porch. Their notes tangled gently with the fading echoes of the guitar, as if the world itself had been holding its breath and finally exhaled. The bell above the garage door gave its usual tired rattle as Elias stepped inside. Gravel crunched under his boots, the smell of motor oil rust and burnt coffee filled the air. Benny, the owner, mid-60s, wiry grease on every inch of him, barely glanced up from the engine he was working on. "Morning, Elias." "Morning?" Elias tipped his cap. "Need that belt for the generator. Back shelf, second bin." Benny waved a wrench without looking. "Might have a donut left if the rats didn't get it first." Elias chuckled under his breath, heading toward the shelf. The old TV in the corner was doing what it always did, buzzing low, flickering between static and barely there reception. No one really watched it. It was just noise company. But today the noise turned sharp, clear. A female anchor's voice cut through the fuzz. Still no leads in the disappearance of Camille Reyes, CEO of Titan Defense Systems and decorated former combat officer. Elias stopped mid-step. His hand hovered over the bin, fingers frozen. The screen showed a headshot. Her. Not exactly like the woman asleep on his couch, but close enough. Slicked back hair. Clean. Press ready. Wearing the kind of smile people practiced in mirrors before board meetings. The banner beneath the image read, "Breaking Reyes missing. Foul play suspected." The anchor continued. Reyes was last seen leaving a private gala 2 weeks ago in Denver. Sources confirm internal power struggles within Titan Defense, raising questions about corporate sabotage, potential kidnapping, or worse. Elias's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, arms crossed, weight shifting. The screen cut to shaky footage, her walking out of a glass building alone, then static, then nothing. A second anchor chimed in. "If anyone has information, please contact the authorities immediately." Benny finally glanced over. "You believe that mess?" He wiped his hands on a rag. "Rich folks always drama. Wouldn't surprise me if she's sipping margaritas somewhere waiting for the dust to settle." Elias didn't answer. Couldn't. His pulse hammered behind his ribs. He grabbed the belt from the bin, muttered, "Put it on my tab." Yeah, Benny waved him off. "World's on fire, might as well owe me $50 when it burns." Outside, the sky looked the same, blue, wide. But something under Elias's skin shifted, tightened. The woman on his couch wasn't just someone running. She was someone the world was looking for. Hard. And now she was in his cabin. The sky stretched wider than seemed possible, a velvet black stitched with silver. Stars scattered like spilled salt, bright, untouchable. Elias sat on the porch steps, boots planted in the dirt, hands wrapped around a chipped coffee mug. No coffee left, just the habit of holding something. Camille lowered herself onto the top step beside him, slower than usual, the ache in her ankle still a quiet reminder. For a while, neither said a word. Only the sound of wind brushing through dry grass, the creak of the weathered swing on the far side of the porch, the distant howl of something wild but far enough not to matter. Not dangerous, just alive. Elias tilted his head back. Funny how the sky looks bigger out here. Camille followed his gaze, lips pressed, unreadable. Or maybe it's the first time we've looked in a while. A soft hum of agreement left his throat. Silence settled, but this time it wasn't heavy. Not awkward. Not the silence that fills rooms where people pretend not to exist together. This was different. A kind of silence that asked nothing but offered something anyway. Camille wrapped her arms around her knees. Her fingers brushed the fabric of the borrowed flannel shirt. Elias's sleeves rolled, smelling faintly of cedar and old soap. She glanced sideways. "You always this quiet." Elias let out a low chuckle, not sharp, not defensive, just honest. Talking never fixed much. Working sometimes, listening most times. She nodded, let the words settle. Not many people know how to be quiet without making it feel like punishment, she said softly. Elias didn't answer right away. His thumb traced the rim of the empty mug. Maybe 'cause quiet ain't empty if you fill it with the right things. A shooting star traced a quick silver scar across the sky. Neither of them made a wish. They just watched. Camille's voice came out smaller but steadier. "I don't remember the last time it felt like this, safe without walls." Elias turned slightly, not to press, just to show he was listening. "You don't need to tell me," he said. "Not until you're ready, or not at all." The words didn't close a door, they opened one. And for the first time, Camille believed she might actually step through. The stars hung quieter now. Or maybe it was them who had gotten quieter. Camille's hands fidgeted with the frayed cuff of her borrowed flannel. Her fingers twisted the loose thread until it threatened to snap. Her voice came not loud, not rehearsed, just there. "I wasn't running from someone, Elias." He didn't move, didn't flinch, just waited. She inhaled, shaky, like someone standing on the edge of something, not knowing if it was a cliff or a step forward. "I was running from me." The wind shifted. The old oak beside the porch creaked, dry leaves whispered their own secrets. Camille kept her eyes on her hands. Couldn't meet his yet. I built something, a life, a name that sounded more like armor than identity. People saw the CEO, the soldier, the headline. They never saw whatever was underneath. She swallowed, jaw tight, and somewhere along the way neither did I. Elias leaned back, elbows resting on his knees. His gaze stayed steady, not pushing, not pulling. Camille's voice thinned but didn't break. It got louder. The expectations, the deals, the boardrooms filled with people who smiled with their teeth but never with their eyes. Every room felt like a trap disguised as success. Her nails dug into her palms. I thought if I kept moving, kept achieving, kept proving, maybe I'd forget how hollow it felt. Elias's fingers tapped the side of his mug, a steady rhythm, quiet grounding. "But you don't outrun yourself." Her laugh was brittle, sharp at the edges. "Turns out no matter how far you go, you're always waiting for yourself when you get there." She finally looked at him, eyes rimmed red but dry. Not a breakdown, not this time, just truth. "I didn't get mugged, Elias. I wasn't kidnapped. I left. On purpose. Walked out of a gala wearing shoes that didn't fit and a life that fit even worse." A pause, a breath. "I didn't think anyone would notice or care. Maybe I was hoping they wouldn't." Elias didn't fill the silence, didn't reach for easy words, just let it stretch until it didn't hurt anymore. When he did speak, his voice was steady, low, solid as the earth beneath them. "People always say running's the problem." He tilted his head. "But maybe sometimes running's just the start of figuring out where you actually belong." Camille blinked, a muscle in her jaw softened. "That's either the simplest or the smartest thing anyone said to me in years." Elias half smiled. Maybe both. Somewhere in the distance a coyote called. Not lonely, not lost. Just announcing it was still here. Just like them. The porch grew quieter still. No words for a while, just the shuffle of wind and the rhythmic creak of the old swing. Then Camille breathed in deep as if pulling the memory straight from her bones. Tightened defense. The words left her mouth like they still weighed something. Started it from nothing. 12 years ago. Just me, a garage, and a refusal to let anyone tell me I couldn't. Elias didn't speak, just shifted, turning his body slightly toward her, listening with the kind of patience you couldn't fake. I was 28, fresh out of service, 4 tours. Came home with more ghosts than medals, but with one clear thought. If the world was going to chew me up, I was damn sure gonna build something too big for it to swallow. Her fingers traced the seam of her jeans thumb, circling the same frayed spot over and over. It worked. Contracts, innovation, tech nobody thought possible. I hired vets first, people like me. People nobody else wanted because they were too complicated or too broken. Her jaw tightened. I told myself I was doing it for the right reasons, and for a while maybe I was. She stared out into the dark eyes, unfocused. But then it changed. Somewhere along the line, Titan stopped being something I built and started being something that owned me. A long breath. Board members, investors, shareholders who never held a wrench or a rifle started telling me what mattered. Started deciding which contracts were ethical enough for PR but profitable enough for them. Her hands balled into fists, relaxed, then balled again. I fought. God, I fought. Meetings that felt like war zones. Smiles that hid knives, and the harder I pushed, the more I became exactly what I swore I'd never be. Camille's voice dropped, barely above a whisper. The kind of person who walks into a room and feels like a stranger in her own life. Elias leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Is that when you left? Camille shook her head. No, that was when they took it. A bitter smile, hostile vote, silent coup. Happens in boardrooms the same way it happens in back alleys, just with better suits. Her fingers found the dog tag around her neck. I walked out before they could escort me out. Took nothing but this. Left the titles, the keys, the empire. Left it all like it never even belonged to me. A beat, a long one. Turns out when the machine swallows you, it doesn't spit anything back. Elias studied her. Quiet, steady, unflinching. Maybe he said you weren't meant to be part of the machine. Camille blinked. The tension in her chest eased just enough to breathe again. For the first time in a long time, the silence between them didn't sound like failure. It sounded like a beginning. The morning light caught on the edges of the porch, soft gold and forgiving. Elias knelt beside the old bench, the one that had leaned to the left for 3 summers straight but never quite made it to the top of the to-do list. The wood was splintered along one side, the back panel loose, one leg threatened to give out if anyone heavier than Lena sat too hard. Camille stood nearby, arms crossed, watching, not hovering, not hesitant, just waiting. Elias glanced up, tipped his chin toward the toolbox. Pass me the half-inch socket. She didn't miss a beat. Opened the box, found it without fumbling. Handed it over like she'd done this 100 times. Elias's brow lifted. You know tools. A faint smile tugged at her lips. Surprises me too. The wrench clicked against the bolt, tight, then tighter. Wood creaked but held. Lena sat cross-legged a few feet away. sorting through a pile of screws like they were puzzle pieces, occasionally glancing up but saying nothing. Elias shifted to the other side. Bench's got one more good year if it wants it. Camille crouched beside him, fingers running along the crack in the back slat. Wood glue's not gonna cut it. Needs a brace here. She tapped the weak spot twice. Elias handed her the drill without a word. She took it like second nature. The hum of the drill filled the space, steady, precise. No instructions needed, no stepping on each other's hands, just rhythm. For a long time, the only sound was the buzz of the drill, the occasional scrape of sandpaper, and Lena humming softly as she arranged screws by size. Elias brushed sawdust off his jeans. Didn't peg you for the hands-on type. Camille wiped her palms on her thighs. Neither did most people, including me. The bench groaned as he pressed his weight against it, then settled, solid. Camille patted the back panel. It'll hold. Elias nodded. Yeah, I think it will. Lena climbed up, testing it with her full 8-year-old authority. The bench didn't wobble. She grinned like she'd won something. For a moment, nobody was running. Nobody was hiding. They were just fixing what could be fixed. The afternoon sun dipped lower, stretching shadows across the dusty yard. The breeze smelled of dry grass, warm dirt, and the faint sweetness of something blooming somewhere nearby. Camille sat on the porch steps, elbows resting on her knees, watching the wind play with a loose strand of the prayer flags Elias had hung long ago. Footsteps approached, small, deliberate. Lena. She stood in front of Camille, hands tucked behind her back. Her toes curled into the wood like she was weighing whether or not to speak. Camille glanced up, offered a soft smile. Hey, kiddo. Lena shuffled a step closer. Her eyes flicked between Camille's face and her own feet. She pulled her hands out from behind her back. In them, the compass. The same one Camille had helped fix. The one Lena had guarded like treasure since the day they met. Lena held it out. I want you to have it. Camille blinked. Her first instinct was to laugh, nervous, deflect. But the look on Lena's face, it wasn't casual, it wasn't a game. This was serious, this was sacred. Camille sat straighter. Lena, no. This was from your mom. Lena shook her head fiercely for someone so small. It was, yeah. But I think maybe now it's yours too. Her fingers brushed the smooth wood. You helped it remember where north is. A pause, then quieter. Maybe it can help you remember where you are too. For a second, Camille couldn't breathe. The weight of it wasn't the compass, it was the meaning. She reached out slowly, took it into her palms like something fragile but vital. The brass edges were worn, the crack in the glass still spidered along one corner, but the needle steady, sure. Camille swallowed against the lump rising in her throat. Lena, I don't even have words for how much this means. Lena's eyes softened. You don't need words, just keep it so you know you're not lost. Elias stood a few steps back, watching. Arms crossed. Quiet. But Camille caught it, the way his jaw shifted, the way his hands tightened, then released. Like someone holding back more than they were ready to say. Camille looked down at the compass, then back at Lena. I'll keep it safe, promise. Lena nodded once, then like kids do, spun around and dashed back toward the swing, the moment already folding into her memory as something complete. Camille sat there, thumb tracing the rim of the compass. For the first time in maybe ever, the direction didn't matter as much as the fact she didn't have to walk it alone. Not anymore. The late afternoon light spilled through the cabin windows, turning the wooden floors into rivers of gold. Dust floated in the air, catching the sun like tiny sparks. The guitar sat where it always did, leaning against the wall by the window. Lena eyed it, then eyed Camille, then the guitar again. Finally, her curiosity won. Can you show me?" Her voice was small but hopeful. Camille glanced up from the table where she'd been tracing her fingers around the compass. Her lips curved, unsure at first, then steadier. "Yeah," she said softly. "Yeah, I think I can." She walked over, picked up the guitar. The wood was warm beneath her palms. The strings buzzed under her fingers, out of tune but familiar. Elias was nearby, pretending to busy himself with chopping vegetables for dinner. But his ears caught every word, every sound. His hands slowed, though he didn't turn around. Camille sat cross-legged on the floor, patted the spot in front of her. "Come here." Lena dropped down immediately, knees bumping against Camille's legs. Her hands fidgeted in her lap, but her eyes were brighter than anyone had seen them in a long time. "Okay," Camille started, voice calm. "This string, it's E, lowest note." She plucked it gently. The hum filled the room. Lena's eyes widened. It's kinda like a growl." Camille chuckled. "Exactly. Now this one." She moved to the next string. Is A little higher, but still kinda serious. One by one they worked through the strings, naming them, listening to the tones. Then Camille showed her how to hold a simple chord. Lena's fingers stumbled at first. Too small, wrong angle. She grimaced, muttering, "My hand's dumb." "Nope," Camille corrected. "It's just learning. Hands aren't dumb, they're just stubborn." Lena giggled, a real one. Not polite, not cautious. A sudden bright sound that filled every corner of the little cabin. Elias's knife paused mid-slice. His head tilted slightly. And for the first time in maybe since Anna passed, the sound of laughter felt not like a memory, but like something alive. Something returning. Camille grinned. "Try again." Lena pressed her fingers down, tongue poking out in concentration, then strummed. It was messy, awkward. Two wrong notes, one that buzzed horribly, and yet perfect. They both burst out laughing. "You heard that right?" Lena asked between laughs. "I totally invented a new chord." "Oh, absolutely," Camille nodded. "That's the Lena minor disaster chord, very advanced." Lena collapsed sideways in a fit of giggles. Camille followed her head, dropping back, laughter shaking her shoulders. Elias leaned against the counter, arms crossed, smiling, quiet, watching. For the first time in a very, very long time, the cabin didn't sound like a place people went to hide. It sounded like home. The morning was quiet in the way that only meant one thing out here: something was about to shift. A truck rattled down the gravel road, not one Camille recognized. A puff of dust followed it as it disappeared past the fence line. Elias stepped out onto the porch just as a small plain envelope dropped from the mailbox. No stamp, no return address. He flipped it over. Only one thing written on the back in sharp block letters for CR. Inside the cabin, Camille stood at the sink, rinsing a chipped mug, hands steady but mind far away. Elias walked in, held out the envelope. "This is for you." Her eyes narrowed. "Who even knows?" She trailed off. Her fingers hovered before finally pulling the flap open. One sheet, unfolded once. No signature, no greeting. Just a clean surgical message typed on old paper like something from another era. They haven't found you yet. But they're looking harder now. Your absence is costing them more than money. There are board meetings behind closed doors, lawyers circling, press sniffing where they shouldn't. Some of them don't want you found alive. I've said nothing. I will say nothing. But I can't hold them back forever. You were always better at knowing when to run and when to fight. Don't forget that now. K.R. Camille folded the letter once, then again. Her hands shook not from fear but from something more complicated. Elias stood by the counter watching, silent, steady. Kyle, she said softly. Kyle Rivers. Elias didn't press, but his brow furrowed. An old friend, not just a friend. She exhaled, sat down heavily on the edge of the couch. Kyle was my XO, in the Army. My operations lead when Titan started. The only person in that world I ever trusted without looking over my shoulder. Her fingers tapped the folded paper like it was some kind of code she hadn't fully deciphered yet. This isn't just a warning, Camille muttered. It's a clock. Elias pulled out a chair, sat opposite, calm, measured. How much time? She didn't answer right away. Her thumb pressed against the worn brass of Lena's compass in her pocket. Not enough, she whispered. Outside, the wind shifted. The air smelled different, like rain. A storm wasn't coming. It was already here. The wind had shifted. You could feel it in your teeth before it ever touched your skin. Camille stood at the edge of the back fence, arms crossed, boots scuffing against the dry dirt. Before her, the open field stretched farther than her eyes could follow. Yellow grass swayed like waves. The sky above was too big, too empty, too honest. She gripped the fence post, wood rough beneath her palm, solid, real. Something that didn't ask questions or demand answers. But the questions, they came anyway. How long do you think you can outrun yourself? Her thumb absently brushed the edge of the compass in her jacket pocket. The needle inside still spun true. North, always north. But for what? For weeks this place had been a shelter. A pause button on a life that had spiraled so far out of her own hands she barely recognized the woman she'd been. But standing here watching the wind ripple across the grass, Camille knew something with a clarity that hit as hard as any punch she'd ever taken. You can't live inside a pause. You can rest in it, you can breathe in it, but sooner or later you've gotta press play again. Her breath hitched. She swallowed it back. I walked away from everything. From the company, from the fight, from myself. And yet despite all that, here she was, still breathing, still standing. She closed her eyes, let the wind pull at her hair. Listened to the whistle of it moving through the old barbed wire fence. This wasn't about going back. It wasn't about reclaiming Titan or proving the board wrong or taking her throne back. It was about this, choosing. For the first time in years, maybe in her whole life, the question wasn't, what do I have to do? It was, what do I want to do? Her fingers tightened on the fence, not in fear, not in panic, but with something steadier. Resolve 'em. No, she couldn't stay hidden forever. And no, she wasn't the same woman who walked away from that gala 2 weeks ago. Camille Reyes, the CEO, the soldier, the ghost of Titan might have died in that alley. But whoever she was now, this woman standing under this sky, hands in dirt, compass in pocket heart, stitched together by borrowed kindness and the laughter of a little girl. She was someone else, someone worth becoming. The wind howled, once stronger now, and Camille whispered not loud, not for anyone else, just for herself. No more running. The cottonwood tree stood at the far edge of the property, old crooked roots thick enough to break the surface like the bones of the earth itself. It had seen storms, droughts, time. Now it would see this. Elias carried the small wooden box, rough pine sanded just enough not to splinter. His hands knew how to build things that lasted and sometimes things that didn't need to. Camille followed a folded paper tucked into her palm. The dog tag clinked against its soft metallic final. Lena trailed behind them, a child's solemnity in every step. She didn't speak, didn't fidget, just walked. Quiet, present. When they reached the tree, Elias set the box down. No words yet, just the sound of the wind nudging the branches overhead and the dry rasp of dirt under boots. Camille knelt first. Fingers brushed the soil warm, dry. Her thumb traced the engraved numbers on the dog tag one last time. Too much of my life. Her voice came steady but low. Was written on things like this, numbers, ranks, titles. She unfolded the paper, a faded printout, the last shareholder report with her name at the top. Her face in the corner, the bold font screaming CEO Camille Reyes. None of this fits me anymore. She placed both the dog tag and the paper into the box. Lena stepped forward. From her pocket, a small stone, heart-shaped, the same one she'd found by the garden fence. She set it inside right next to the metal and paper. Camille looked at her surprised. Why? Lena shrugged. So it remembers someone cared. Elias crouched down, took the shovel, broke ground, slow, deliberate, 1 foot of dirt, 2. Just enough. Together they lowered the box in. Camille pressed her palm flat against the lid for one long, quiet breath. Then Elias filled the hole, 1 scoop, then another. The soil landed soft, gentle. When it was done, Camille brushed dirt off her hands, then reached into her jacket, pulled out the compass. She didn't bury it. She hooked the strap around her wrist. Because some things you carry forward. Elias looked at her. Steady, unspoken understanding in the set of his shoulders. It's not forgetting, he said quietly. It's just choosing what still belongs. Camille nodded. Yeah, exactly that. The wind shifted, stronger now, but not cruel, just clean. And under the cottonwood tree the past rested. Not erased, not abandoned, just put in its rightful place. The old barn at the edge of town hadn't seen much life in years. Its paint was faded to almost nothing, the roof sagged just enough to make anyone second-guess walking under it. But today it looked different. A fresh coat of paint, still patchy but stubborn. A crooked sign hung above the Doorfield School, Skills for Life. Inside, mismatched folding chairs formed a wide circle. On one side, 3 kids ranging from 8 to maybe 12. On the other, 2 older men and a woman, their posture unmistakable. Veterans. Elias leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching. Not interfering. just there, like he always was. Camille stood at the front. No suit, no clipboard, just jeans, boots, and a flannel shirt rolled at the sleeves. Her hand rested on the table beside her on the compass, a reminder, a promise. She cleared her throat, voice steady but warmer than it had ever sounded in a boardroom. "All right," she started, "here's the deal. Nobody's here to be perfect. We're here to figure stuff out. Together." She held up a tangled mess of rope. "Today, knots. Tomorrow, fire building. Next week, maybe how to breathe when the world feels too loud." A boy in the front snorted, "Knots?" Camille grinned. "Yeah, knots. Because sometimes the only thing between you and a bad situation is whether something holds when it's supposed to." That got a small chuckle from one of the older vets, a man with a gray beard and hands that never quite stopped fidgeting. Lena sat off to the side, sketchbook in her lap. She wasn't part of the class, but she never missed a session. Not since the idea became real. As Camille demonstrated, her hands moved with quiet confidence. Rope looped, fingers worked, over, under, through, muscle memory. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, she wasn't leading to prove something. She was leading because it felt right. Because maybe the best way to stay found was to help someone else stop feeling lost. Elias shifted against the doorway, a quiet smile pulling at the corner of his mouth. Yeah, life was starting to look different now. And maybe, just maybe, it was better this way. The morning sun caught the sawdust in the air, turning it into something soft, almost golden. Out behind the cabin, where an old shed used to lean half-collapsed, now stood the bare bones of something new. 4 walls, no roof yet, a frame made of pine, raw, honest. Elias balanced on a ladder, driving the last beam into place. His hands moved steady, practiced. You could tell this wasn't his first time building something from nothing. Camille stood below, holding the next board boots pressed firm into the dirt. A pencil behind her ear. "Level," Elias called down. She tilted her head, squinted, adjusted the brace. "Now it is." He nodded, nailed it into place. Neither of them needed to say it, but both of them felt it. This wasn't just lumber or nails or sweat. This was choosing to build something instead of run from everything. Elias climbed down, wiped his hands on his jeans. "We'll finish the roof tomorrow." Then walls, insulation. Camille leaned against the frame, arms crossed. "I still can't believe you're doing this. You said you needed a space to teach, play, write." Elias shrugged. "Figured might as well make one." Her gaze softened. "You didn't have to." "Yeah." His lips curved. "I kinda did." Lena dashed up from the garden, waving a jar of nails like it was treasure. "I found more. They were in the toolbox under the broken drill." Camille grinned. "Perfect, bring 'em here." As Lena handed the jar over, Camille knelt beside her, pressing her palm against the unfinished wood. "You know what this is?" Lena tilted her head. "A studio." "More than that," Camille said quietly. "It's proof that broken things can turn into something better if you build it right." Lena nodded, serious in the way only a child can be. Elias stepped back, hands on his hips. He looked at Camille, not with expectation, not with doubt, but with something steadier. Belief in her, in this. For a while they stood in silence, watching the wind ripple through the pines beyond the frame. Not a word needed filling that space. The world wasn't fixed. The past wasn't erased. But here in this little stretch of dirt and sawdust, they were building something that hadn't existed yesterday. And that was enough. Camille ran her palm along the beam. Feels solid. Elias grinned. Yeah, so do you. She laughed, shook her head. Not yet, but getting there. And as the wind carried the scent of fresh-cut wood into the sky, the future didn't seem so far anymore. The fire crackled low, soft orange flickers dancing against the fading blue of the sky. It was that kind of sunset you only got out here, half sky, half silence. The trees stood like old witnesses, the grass whispered with the wind. Lena was already curled up in her sleeping bag beside the fire pit, head tucked against Peanut, the dog snoring in small, ragged breaths. Elias sat on the split log bench he'd made years ago. Shoulders relaxed, boots stretched toward the flames. Camille sat beside him, close but not too close. For a while neither of them spoke. Didn't need to. The quiet wasn't empty. It was full. Full of things neither of them could name but both could feel. Camille leaned forward, elbows on her knees, hands laced. Her eyes followed the sparks as they rose, climbed, disappeared into the dark. Her voice came out so soft it was almost part of the wind. I'm not running anymore. Elias didn't move, not at first. Just blinked slowly, like someone hearing something they weren't sure they'd ever get to hear. She turned just enough for him to see her face in the firelight. I thought that's all I knew how to do. Run, build walls, leave before someone could decide I wasn't enough. Her fingers brushed the compass still strapped around her wrist. Turns out maybe it wasn't about running from anything. She glanced at him. It was about not knowing where to stay. Elias's gaze stayed steady, grounded. You figured it out yet? He asked. Her smile was small, honest. I think maybe I have. The fire popped. A log shifted, sparks flared and vanished. She leaned her shoulder against his, not dramatically. Not staged, just there, solid, real. Elias didn't flinch, didn't tense. He just shifted barely enough so her weight fit against his like it was always supposed to. His voice rumbled low, steady. You don't owe me that, you know. Staying. I know. She nodded. That's why it matters. A long breath passed between them. The kind that felt more like a decision than anything words could carry. No promises, no contracts, no papers. Just this, a choice, and sometimes the quiet weight of a choice held more than any vow ever could. Elias tilted his head, barely a smile. So he nudged the fire with a stick. Guess I better finish that studio, huh? Camille laughed soft. Yeah, you better. And in the hush that followed, the wind didn't sound like something waiting to take anyone away anymore. It just sounded like home. The front yard had never been this full, not in years. Folding chairs lined the gravel drive, mismatched. Some wobbled. Some were just milk crates flipped upside down. A string of paper lanterns hung from the porch beam to the big oak by the fence, swaying in the soft evening breeze. Kids chased each other between rows of chairs, laughter rolling louder than the wind. Neighbors stood in clusters, balancing paper cups of lemonade and plates piled with cookies. Peanut tail wagging wildly wove between legs, soaking in every scratch and crumb that fell his way. On the makeshift stage, an old pallet balanced on cinder blocks, Camille adjusted the mic stand. Her hands didn't tremble, not anymore. Lena stood beside her, cradling the small guitar they'd restrung together last week. Her sneakers tapped nervously, but her grin said she was ready. Elias stood just behind them, arms crossed, leaning against the porch post. He wasn't part of the show, but somehow everyone knew he was part of the reason it existed. Camille glanced at Lena. "You ready?" Lena nodded. "Think so." She grinned. "Kinda." Camille chuckled. "Kinda's enough." She turned to the crowd, raised a hand. "Thanks for coming, everyone. First time doing this, so if it goes sideways, just pretend it was supposed to." That got a laugh. The easy kind, the kind that belongs to small towns and safe places. Camille strummed the first chord, smooth, confident. Lena followed. A little slower, a little messier, but perfectly hers. The song wasn't complicated. A simple folk tune about rivers and stars. But as their voices blended, small, strong, and steady, the music filled the yard, filled something bigger than that. Neighbors tapped feet, clapped along. Someone whistled off-key. A kid danced like nobody had ever told him what rhythm was supposed to be. Elias watched it all, quiet. A small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Not the proud kind. Not the amazed kind. The kind that says, yeah, this was worth it. As the final chord faded, the applause wasn't polite. It was real, full. And for the first time in a long time, the cabin wasn't just a shelter. It was exactly what it was always meant to be. Home. The crowd had thinned. The chairs were folded and stacked by the porch. Paper lanterns still swayed, catching the last blush of sunset. Elias stood by the fence talking with a neighbor about roof repairs. Peanut chased fireflies under the oak tree. Camille sat on the porch steps, Lena beside her, both cross-legged hands, sticky from lemonade and cookies. For a while, they just watched the sky shift from orange to deep blue. Then Camille reached behind her, pulled out a small wooden box. Sanded smooth, simple, no lock. Just a brass latch polished by her thumb 100 times. She set it between them. "For you," she said softly. Lena blinked. "Me." "Mm-hmm." Camille nudged it closer. "Go on, open it." Lena flipped the latch. The lid creaked, hinges stiff but still holding. Inside, a folded piece of parchment, hand-drawn, inked with care. Lena unfolded it, eyes widening. A map, not of the world, not of anywhere official. It was their map. The cabin was marked in the center, labeled home in Camille's careful handwriting. Off to the left, the cottonwood tree with a tiny X beneath it, where we left the past. To the north, a small guitar icon, first song. South, a hammer and nails, drawn clumsily but clear, built together. And scattered across the parchment, dotted lines connecting fire pits, garden patches. The broken fence Elias fixed last spring, the stream where Lena swore she saw a turtle that wasn't real, but everyone pretended it was anyway. Lena traced a finger along the path. You made this." Camille nodded. "Yeah, took a while, but I wanted you to have it." "Right, well," Camille's voice softened. "Because sometimes the world feels bigger than it is. And when that happens, it helps to remember where you've been and who you've been with." Lena stared at it like it was treasure. Maybe it was. "There's space." Camille pointed, "for more, for whatever comes next." Lena looked up. Are you gonna stay for more?" Camille smiled. No hesitation. Yeah, kid, I'm staying. Lena threw her arms around Camille's waist without thinking. Good, she mumbled into her side. Really good. Camille hugged her back chin, resting lightly on Lena's hair. Elias watched from a distance, didn't say a word. Just leaned against the fence, hands in his pocket, smile quiet, steady, real. The box sat open on Lena's lap. The map fluttered once in the wind but didn't fly away, because now they all knew exactly where they belonged. The porch light clicked on, soft, warm, just bright enough to push back the dark but not enough to chase it away completely. The cabin stood quiet, not silent. Quiet in the way a home sounds when it's breathing. A low hum of laughter drifted from the open window. Dishes clinking, the scrape of a chair. A voice humming something half-remembered, half-invented. Camille sat on the top-step guitar in her lap, fingers trailing over the strings, slow, unhurried. No song, no performance, just sound, just being. Elias stood beside her, one hand resting on the porch beam. His gaze stretched past the treetops out toward the horizon where stars began to puncture the blue-black sky. Neither spoke, neither needed to. The compass hung from the nail beside the door frame where Camille had placed it earlier that day. Not in her pocket anymore, not something to clutch like a lifeline. Now it just spun gently, caught in the breeze. Its needle swung, slowed, then pointed true. Not north, not exactly. Just here. Inside the cabin, Lena's voice floated out, singing softly to Peanut as she tucked him beneath her quilt. Off-key. Perfect. Camille plucked a single chord, let it hang in the air until the wind carried it away. Elias shifted, close enough that their shoulders brushed, just a little, just enough. His voice was low. Never thought he paused. Never thought it'd feel like this again. Camille's lips curved. Me neither. She tilted her head back, looked up at the porch light. Its glow framed the doorway, the studio half finished, beyond it the garden where things had started growing again, and the cottonwood tree in the distance silhouetted like an old friend. A deep, quiet breath. You know, she murmured, I used to think home was something you built out of walls, out of plans, money, titles. Her fingers strummed a soft chord. But maybe it's just she glanced at him. A light that stays on no matter how late you get back. Elias didn't answer, just reached out, laced his fingers with hers. Not asking, not taking, just there. The guitar hummed once more, the compass spun gently, the porch light flickered, held, stayed. And the wind carried it all forward, laughter, music, the creak of wood beneath steady feet. Nothing perfect, nothing scripted, just a life, chosen, built, kept. Home. The porch light still glows. The compass still spins gently in the breeze, but it always finds its way back to north. And under this small roof, with music in the air, fresh wood on the workbench, and a map that keeps growing, 3 people who once thought they were broken have quietly built something no storm can take away. A home. Not perfect, not polished, but real, chosen, and worth keeping. And maybe that's the most extraordinary kind of story there is. If this story felt like a quiet reminder that kindness still matters and that it's never too late to start again, maybe leave a like, maybe subscribe. We tell stories like this for hearts like yours. Thank you for sharing your time with us. See you in the next story where hope always has a seat at the table.